I really had been spending a few years at that point thinking about, I really want to have more control over my schedule and time, and family is really important to me. And I love to travel. And so I really wanted to be able to not just sit in a 9 to 5 job and be in an office. So I started dreaming about how could I have more flexibility. And I had this kind of spark of entrepreneurial, I listened to a lot of podcasts, shout out to Second Life and how I built this, and listened to all these entrepreneurs and how they built their businesses. And so I just started dreaming about how that could happen for me.
Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thanks.com. That's THANKZ.com with the subject line, A Founder's Life, and you'll get $1,000 off your first month. Now, I'm excited to be joined today by Liz Andarcia. Liz, thank you for joining. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me, Leo. I'm Liz Andarcia. I'm the co-founder of Rise Collective Consultants. We are a boutique retail consultancy, and I'm based here in Sacramento, Northern California. Well, it'll be a nice steamy 102 degrees today. I am a mother of 2 boys, 9 and 19 years old, who keep me very busy. And before founding Rise Collective, I spent 20 years in corporate retail, mostly at the Williams-Sonoma brands in sourcing and product development. And I'm very excited to be here today.
Well, thank you. Why don't we start off by, if you talk about a little about how that journey was in your previous life, and then talk a little more about what you're doing and how you're helping your customers today.
Sure. Well, I started at Williams-Sonoma right out of college, which, not a lot of people go right from university into their 20-year career. So that's not the normal, I think, path, especially nowadays. But I fell into something that I loved. I loved doing sourcing, which I loved international business just right off the bat. I loved traveling. And for me, it was just a wonderful career. And so I went into that, and I spent 20 years kind of across every single brand within the portfolio of Williams-Sonoma. So the Pottery Barn brands, West Elm, Williams-Sonoma, all of them, and really building products. And so I spent many years doing that. And then during COVID, when we got a taste of what it was like to work a different way and everyone was working from home, I really had been spending a few years at that point thinking about, I really want to have more control over my schedule and time, and family is really important to me. And I love to travel. And so I really wanted to be able to not just sit in a 9 to 5 job and be in an office. So I started dreaming about how could I have more flexibility. And I had this kind of spark of entrepreneurial, I listened to a lot of podcasts, shout out to Second Life and how I built this, and listened to all these entrepreneurs and how they built their businesses. And so I just started dreaming about how that could happen for me. And so during COVID, left not really with an idea of what I was going to do, but had this idea of doing consulting, and fell kind of into it quickly because at that point, so many retail businesses were going crazy during COVID, especially in home furnishings, as you remember, because everyone was at home and buying everything for their homes. And so a lot of businesses needed help with home furnishings. And so I started helping different businesses with their, with consulting around building product. And then from there, my co-founder and I decided to start a more robust business around consulting. And we developed Rise Collective Consultants, where we now bring together a bunch of different consultants all around product development. So we do design, sourcing, product development, merchandising, go-to-market strategies. So it's really everything from a design idea, bringing it to shelf. And so everything within that area is where we focus. And so if you come to us with just an idea, we can help you bring that product all the way to fruition. And so that's really where the idea came from. And we saw also at the same time, there was just so much talent that was exiting the market because they had the same kind of idea like during COVID too, that they felt like, I want a different way of living as well. And so we just saw there was this talent leaving, and also there was also the companies that had a different way of also working and kind of came together at the same time. And that's where it started. And that was 3 years ago, exactly, actually, right now. I think you're on mute, Leo.
And how many of your customers are sort of entrepreneurs on that sort of complete startup with an idea and you're helping them turn that into something real versus companies who are launching a new product or a new line?
Yeah, I'd say we probably have 25% of our customers are just like brand new with an idea. And then we have, another probably 50% are mid-sized brands that you would know of. They are really, those types they have an established product that they already work on, and they might be going into a new product category that they don't do. So say they're really strong in furniture, but they want to move into textiles, for example, and they don't have a team that works in textiles, or it could be the reverse of that.
Excellent. You're able to bring some real blue chip experience into that.
Yeah. What we realized is like the fractional talent works so well for these smaller brands because, they can't really afford to bring in someone with 25 years experience if you're a small brand. But you can bring in someone with 25 years experience for 5 or 10 hours a week, and then they could bring in all of this expertise at a much, lower rate. And then, you come in for a short amount of time and help out that brand, and then you can come out and go in and help another brand.
Excellent. And talk to us a little bit about what family means to you. You mentioned your kids.
Yeah. I mean, family obviously is so important. And I think one of the big reasons, as I said, to move to out of this 9-to-5 kind of career is to have this flexibility. And so for me, that flexibility was really that I wanted to be able to be where I wanted to be at that time. And that was like, if my son had a field trip that I wanted to go to, our family is spread out all over the world. I'm originally from Canada. So my dad is in Canada. My ex-husband's family is from Venezuela. His sister's in Mexico. I have family here in Sacramento now, which is great. So we're close by, but if you have 2 or 3 weeks off a year, it's like to even just see our family was impossible amongst that amount of time. And then if you also want to go on a vacation with your family, not just seeing your family, there's absolutely no way that would make it, that could ever happen. So I think for us, it was, I just wanted to be able to be, spend time with my family when I can, but also then be able to visit them and spend more than 2 or 3 days at a time with them when you visit them. And so I think that's just been life-changing. And I can spend, I really try when I have my son with me, that I work 10 to 4. I spend the mornings with him. I then get to work out and I work, very, hard between those hours. And I pick him up from school and then I'm with him until the time he goes to bed. And so I think I just feel very, very grateful that I can have my schedule be that way. And of course, the nights that I don't have him, then I can, either go and travel those days or work later, take meetings, because obviously I work in a very global role being in sourcing. So I work with India and, a lot of times you're taking early calls and late calls when you work in sourcing. So those are the nights and the mornings, and I take the early and the late calls.
Excellent. Sounds like you find a good balance there. And how about health? What does health, whether that be physical health, mental health, sleep, nutrition, how does that look for you?
Well, I'm definitely one of those health geeks. I have the Oura Rings and the Apple Watch, and yeah, me too. I'm always listening to, every podcast and reading everything and, wearing the weighted vest and eating the protein and all the things. So it's really important. I mean, I feel like for me, I have to work out every day. Every Sunday, I schedule all my workouts for the week and I make sure that that's the first thing I do for the week. And then I kind of plan the rest of my week around that. And so I just feel like I don't function well unless I work out. I try to every single day. So for my mental health, the physical health has to be there. And I've always been that way my whole life. I've always been someone who has to working out has been really important to me. And then eating well, making sure that we have healthy, food in our house, organic, going to the farmer's market, just moving your body and walking and being active. It's one of the biggest priorities for me. And I think just for, instilling that in my kids, and, not being obsessive about it, but it being something that's just part of the fabric of our family and how I raise our kids and who I am as a person. And I find it really interesting to learn about it. And it's changing all the time. Like one thing, this is a fad, and obviously, there's always new things, but I love to learn about it all the time.
Yeah, I think, my thing is if you don't schedule, it doesn't happen. So I just have to schedule mine 6 weeks in advance because otherwise Calendly steals all my time.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm very strict on my Calendly. I now only have it on one day that it's open because that's what would happen. It would be that it was taking over everything. Yeah, it does. You have to schedule it in advance or it doesn't happen. It really doesn't.
And what do you like to do for fun?
Well, I do like working out for fun, but I really like working out with my friends. I mean, that's the twofer, we call it. If you can work out and be with your friends at the same time, and that's usually like walks, so where you can actually talk and catch up. I love that. But I'd say my favorite thing is traveling. I'm like a travel obsessed person. I'm going to go to my 50th country this year, which I'm really excited about. I have this, I want to go to a country a decade. So it'll be my 50 by 50 and 60 by 60. So I'm trying to catch up a few so I can, as I get up to 70 and 80, it won't be so hard to hit them. And I try to drag the kids along. I'm hoping that they're going to think it is as fun as I do. I think I'm hoping, as they get older, they seem to enjoy it more and more. Sometimes not as much as I enjoy it, but even just exploring in my backyard. I love to the new restaurant openings and coffee shops and just exploring in general, I think is one of the things that I love to do for fun, and reading up on, new places to go. And when I'm going to travel to a new place, I'm always reading the blogs and just discovery, I think in general is really fun for me. And being active and spending time with family and friends and community is really important. Any sort of community based, we live in a really wonderful neighborhood here, and I love to spend time with our neighbors and friends.
And how would you define, it seems like your life is pretty balanced. How would you define a balanced life for you?
I mean, I really think that the 10 to 4 thing is really for me is, I'm pretty strict to now that I can control my schedule is really trying to have the time to work out, spend time with my family, have the time to be with friends, have the time to go for a lunch if I want to. Flexibility to travel. I mean, usually in the summers, this summer we're not doing it, but the last 2 summers, I've spent multiple weeks in Europe, and that was my dream. The dream of this was to be able to go for 4 or 5 weeks in the summer when the kids are out of school and work, be able to work when I can work over there. And my younger son was in camp there. And it was just this is why I did this. This is amazing. I was pinching myself the whole time. I can't believe this. This is what I always as I was driving, listening to the podcast, this is what I always imagined and couldn't believe it was happening. So that to me is the balanced life, being able to do the work that I love, but also have a life that you dream of and not wait till you retire and then you have a few years to do it.
Perfect. Definitely sounds like a balanced life. And here's an easy one for you. What has been a pivotal moment in your life?
Well, I mean, I do think starting this business obviously has been the big pivotal shift. And it's interesting because, corporate life worked very well for me. I never, I did it for 20 years. So, I worked in the machine. A lot of people who I think are entrepreneurs, the machine doesn't work well for them. They are fighting it all the time. I never was really fighting it. It was I worked fine in it. And I think when I got out of it, I was oh, well, I think entrepreneurship probably was actually where I should have been. So making that pivot, I think felt very natural to me. And I'm glad that I was brave enough to do it and did it sooner than later, even though I was in my mid 40s when I did it. But I'm glad that I didn't wait even later than that to do it. So, there's definitely days and weeks where you're oof, I wish I had that steady paycheck, especially right now with the tariffs and every day things changing. But I think overall, I wouldn't change it for a second. And I have the most amazing business partner, and we just weathering the storm together and building this business together is just so much fun. And working with all these different clients, and you're learning and growing every day in a different way than when you work with one company, even though there's so many companies amongst the umbrella of Williams-Sonoma. So that is really nice. You're always learning because there's a million, there's so many companies. But being with a different company with every client that we have is just this exponential growth for me is really fun because I love to learn and be challenged all the time. So I think that part has been really fun.
There's definitely nothing easy about the entrepreneurial journey. It's a fun journey with its ups and downs. What's one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
I think it's your network. Really, you have to really like tap into that network that you've grown and then be really generous too. Like to me, it's like be generous with your time. And I think for us, like we've been I think it's just warmed our hearts so much how generous people have been to us. People that you wouldn't expect and other entrepreneurs that have helped us so much. And so now we like to pay that forward so much to other entrepreneurs. Not that we've been in this game for that long, but anyone that we can help, we want to help. So I think because we feel so grateful for those who have helped us along the way. And to define other networks of entrepreneurs, like a lot of like these networks have helped us in the beginning that we joined, and to then really just get out there and make those meetings and take the time to meet with other entrepreneurs and hear their stories and what's worked for them. And I think that is the thing that's really been for us a big game changer, because sometimes it's like, oh man, to like have all those meetings in every week feels like it's all this time, but it really is so worth it. And then it's really at the same time, you need to then be generous with your time for other people. To me, I think that's so important.
Great advice. And how can people find you?
Well, we're on all the channels. I think LinkedIn, Rise Collective Consultants, and I'm just Liz Andarcia on there. And then on Instagram, same thing, Rise Collective Consultants or Liz Andarcia. So those are probably the two best places to find us. And it'd be great if anyone, I'm happy to talk to anyone, reach out, anyone who's starting out or interested about what we're doing. Happy to talk to anyone.
Well, thank you. And thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and please leave a review.